Today I would like to talk about how the people who are living in Israel right now, how they're the focus on end time. They're very important to what people believe on end time who are futurists, because if the Jews over there are really not the Jews of Jesus' time, but a different group of people, then that poses a big problem for their beliefs, because their beliefs are totally and completely wrapped up with Jesus coming back to the Jews. And um, if for any reason it's proven to them that the Jews in Israel are really not the same Jews as Jesus' time, it would make them have to check their eschatology. If you don't know what that means, it's just your end time belief. And I would like to first go to some really good sources that are the people over there that call themselves Jews, from their own sources, and some that are not. First of all, I'm going to a website. It's called www.iamthewitness.com. /doc/Ashkenazi are not the descendants of the ancient Israelites. .htm semicolon 1980 Jewish AL. These are where I've gotten a lot of my best sources. The Jews admit that they are not the descendants of the ancient Israelites. In their writings under the heading of A Brief History of the Terms for Jew in the 1980 Jewish Almanac is the following. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew, or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or Hebrew. 1980 Jewish Almanac. I'm going to get to why that is. Encyclopedia American, 1985. Khazars, an ancient Turkic-speaking people who ruled a large and powerful state in the steppes north of the Caucasus Mountains from the 7th century to their demise in the mid-11th century AD. In the 8th century, its political and religious head, as well as the greater part of the Khazars nobility, abandoned paganism and converted to Judaism. The Khazars are believed to be the ancestors of most Russian and Eastern European Jews. Now, what happened was during the time that the Jews, well, it wasn't just the Jews. Jews are just from the tribe of Judah. But when the Israelites were in bondage, they had been taken by the Babylonians. And during this time, while they were in bondage, most of the 10 tribes were lost. After that, there was mainly the tribe of Judah left during Jesus' time. And after 70 AD, almost all of the people that were once God's people were destroyed. There was some left, but they were taken as slaves and spread out throughout the whole world. Nobody today knows where or who the actual descendants of Abraham um, all the way to Jacob were. They have no idea. And so when they try to say that they do, and that the people over in Israel right now, that they are Jews, um, they have no way of being able to prove that. Encyclopedia Britannica, the 15th edition, says Khazar's confederation of Turkic and Iranian tribes that established a major commercial empire in the second half of the 6th century, covering the southeastern section of modern European Russia. In the middle of the 8th century, the ruling classes adopted Judaism as their religion. So the Khazars are the people who call themselves the Israelites that living in Israel right now. They were the Iranian tribes, and they were Turkic speaking, and they converted to Judaism as their religion. By converting to Judaism, that didn't make them a Jew. That just meant they picked up the religion of the Kabbalah mixed in with the Old Testament teachings. Academic American Encyclopedia in 1985 says Ashkenazism. The Ashkenazism are one of the two major divisions of the Jews, the other being the Sephardim. Encyclopedia Americana, 1985. Ashkenazism. The Ashkenazism are the Jews whose ancestors lived in Germany, in German lands. It was among the Ashkenazi Jews that the idea of a political Zionism emerged, leading ultimately to the establishment of the State of Israel. In the late 1960s, Ashkenazi Jews numbered some 11 million, about 84% of the world Jewish population. The Jewish Encyclopedia. Khazars, a non-Semitic, Asiatic, Mongolian tribal nation who immigrated into Eastern Europe about the 1st century, who were converted as an entire nation to Judaism. In the 7th century, in the 1st century, who were converted to an entire nation to Judaism in the 7th century by expanding Russian nation, which absorbed the entire Khazar population, and who account for the presence in Eastern Europe of the great number of Yiddish Jews in Russia, Poland, Lithuania, Galicia, Bessarabia, and Romania. The Encyclopedia Judaica in 1972. Ashkenazism. The Ashkenazism are the Jews whose ancestors lived in German lands. It was among Ashkenazi Jews that the idea of political Zionism emerged, leading ultimately to the establishment of the State of Israel. In the late 1960s, Ashkenazi Jews numbered some 11 million, about 84% of the world Jewish population. The Jewish Encyclopedia says Khazars, a non-Semitic, catch that, non-Semitic, Asiatic, Mongolian tribal nation who immigrated into Eastern Europe about the 1st century, who were converted as an entire nation to Judaism in the 7th century by the expanding Russian nation, which absorbed the entire Khazar population and who account for the presence in Eastern Europe of the great number of Yiddish-speaking Jews in Russia, Poland, Lithuania, Galatia, Bessarabia, and Romania. The Encyclopedia Judaica in 1972. Khazars, a national group of general Turkic type, independent and sovereign Eastern Europe. Excuse me, I gotta get a drink. Okay, sovereign in Eastern Europe between the 7th and 10th centuries CE. During part of this time, the leading Khazars professed Judaism. In spite of the negligible information of an archaeological nature, the presence of Jewish groups and the impact of Jewish ideas in Eastern Europe are considerable. During the Middle Ages, groups have been mentioned as migrating to Central Europe from the East, often have been referred to as Khazars, thus making it impossible to overlook the possibility that they originated from within the former Khazar Empire. The Universal Jewish Encyclopedia. Now this is another Jewish source. The primary meaning of Ashkenaz and Ashkenazism in Hebrew is Germany and Germans. This may be due to the fact that the home of the ancient ancestors of Germans is Media, which is the biblical Ashkenaz. Kuraz is of the opinion that in the early medieval ages, the Khazars were sometimes referred to as Ashkenazim. About 92% of all Jews, or approximately 14,500, are Ashkenazim. Now, coming from a Jewish source, that is very powerful. That shows right there that most of them are Gentiles that converted to Judaism. They were the Ashkenazim, or Ashkenazis. New Groyler Encyclopedia. Khazars, pronounced Khazars. The Khazars, a Turkish people, created a commercial and political empire that dominated substantial parts of South Russia during much of the 7th through 10th centuries. During the 8th century, the Khazar aristocrats and the Khagan king were converted to Judaism. The Khazars established their capital, Attal, in the Volga Delta, and for 4 centuries thereafter, this Jewish empire held the balance of power between the Christian Byzantine Empire and the Muslim Caliphate. The fortified Khazar city of Sarkil on the lower Don River was built by Byzantine help and served as a crossroads to Central Asia. The Khazars controlled many of the trade routes to the Orient. Some of the Radhanites, Jewish merchants from Gaul, for example, were accustomed to crossing the Khazar Empire while traveling to and from China and India. During the late 10th and early 11th centuries, an alliance of Byzantine and Russians broke the late 10th and early 11th centuries, an alliance Byzantine and Russian, broke the power of the Khazars in the Crimea. In 1965, Sviatoslav, the first Duke of Kiev, decisively defeated the Khazar army. Further to the east, new waves of Turkic invaders overran the remains of the Khazar state. The Bible relates that the Khazars, Ashkenazi Jews, were and are the sons of Japheth, not Shem. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood, the sons of Japheth, the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. Genesis 10:1-3. Therefore the Bible proves that the Ashkenaz Jews, Khazars, are not the descendants of Shem and cannot be Semite. So when they cry anti-Semitism, really they can't cry that because they're not Semitic, but they do anyway. Kemerati king adopts Judaism and converts his army and people. Himmerite, See Sabian's Jewish Encyclopedia, page 403. Sabians, the inhabitants of ancient kingdom of Sheba in southeastern Arabia, known from the Bible, classical writers and narrative inscriptions. The genealogies of Genesis, give 3 pedigrees for Sheba, the eponymous ancestor of the Sabians, who is variously termed. Number 1, the son of Ramah and the grandson of Cush, Genesis 10:7, 1 Chronicles 1:9, Ezekiel 27:22, and 38:13. 2, the son of Joktan and a great-great-grandson of Shem, Genesis 10:28 and 1 Chronicles 1:22, and 3, the son of Jokshan and a grandson of Abraham and Keturah, Genesis 25:3, 1 Chronicles 1:32. There seem, therefore, to have been 3 stocks of Sabians, one in Africa, Comp, the Ethiopian city of Saga, mentioned by Strabo, Geography, page 77, and the other 2 in Arabia. The Outline of History by H.G. Wells. This is the famous H.G. Wells. It is highly probable that the bulk of the Jews' ancestors never lived in Palestine at all, which witnesses the power of historical assertion over facts. Facts Are Facts by Benjamin Friedman. Following in the story of the conversion of a tribe of people in Russia to Judaism and the origin, more than 95% of the Jews of Eastern Europe, without a complete and accurate knowledge of the origin and history of the Jews in Eastern Europe, it is quite impossible for Christians to intelligently understand the harmful influence the Jews have exerted for 10 centuries. You will probably be astonished, as many Christians were years ago when I electrified the nation with the first publication by me of the facts disclosed by my many years of research into the origin, he says, and the history of the Jews in Eastern Europe. My many years of intensive research established beyond the question of any doubt, contrary to the generally accepted belief held by Christians that the Jews in Eastern Europe at any time in their history in Eastern Europe were never the legendary lost 10 tribes of Bible lore. The historic fact is incontrovertible. Relentless research established as equally true that the Jews in Eastern Europe at no time in their history could be correctly regarded as the direct lineal descendants of the legendary lost 10 tribes of the Bible lore. The Jews in Eastern Europe in modern history cannot legitimately point to a single ancient ancestor who ever set even a foot on the soil of Palestine in the era of Bible history. Research also revealed that the Jews in Eastern Europe were never Semites, are not Semites now, nor can they ever be regarded as Semites at any future time by any stretch of the imagination. Exhaustive research also irrevocably rejects as a fantastic fabrication the generally accepted belief by Christians that the Jews in Eastern Europe are the legendary chosen people, so very vocally publicized by Christian clergy from their pulpits. The American People Encyclopedia for 1954 and 15 through 292 records the following in references to the Khazars. In the year 740 AD, the Khazars were officially converted to Judaism. A century later, they were crushed by the incoming Slavic-speaking people and were scattered over Central Europe, where they were known as Jews. From the above, we can clearly see that the Jews fully understand their Khazarian heritage, as the third edition of the Jews Encyclopedia for 1925 records. Khazars, a people of Turkish origin whose life and history are interwoven with the very beginnings of the history of the Jews of Russia. The kingdom of the Khazars were firmly established in most of South Russia, long before the foundation of the Russian monarchy by the Bulgarians, page 855. Jews have lived on the shores of the Black and Caspian Seas since the first century of the Common Era after the death of Christ. Historical evidence points to the region of the Ural as the home of the Khazars. Among the classical writers of the Middle Ages, they were known as the Khazars, the Akhatars, and the Akhatars spelled with a K, and in the Russian chronicles as Khwalisses and Ugry and Byelye. The Encyclopedia Judica, Volume 10, 1971 edition, relates the following about the Khazars. Khazars, a national group of general Turkic type, independent and sovereign in Eastern Europe between the 7th and 10th centuries AD. During part of this time, the leading Khazars professed Judaism. Encyclopedia Judica, Volume 10, 1971. The Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, which is another Jewish source that's important. Khazars, a medieval people, probably related to the Bulgars, whose ruling class adopted Judaism during the 8th century. The Khazars seems to have emerged during the 6th century from the vast nomadic Hun Turki Empire, which stretched from the steppes of Eastern Europe and the Volga basin to the Chinese frontier. Although it is often claimed that allusions to the Khazars are found as early as 2000 CE, actually they are not mentioned until 627. Most Jewish historians state the conversion of the Khazar king to Judaism during the first half of the century AD. This, since it's a Jewish source also, shows that the Jews are very much aware that they are Khazar Gentiles who converted to Judaism and are not Jews by race as they claim. Okay, Achaemenid, American Encyclopedia, Deluxe Library Edition, Volume 12, page 66 states, the Khazars, a Turkic people, created a commercial and political empire that dominated substantial parts of South Russia during much of the 7th through 10th centuries. During the 8th century, the Khazar aristocracy and the Cajun kings were converted to Judaism. The New Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 6, page 836 relates, Khazar, member of a confederation of Turkic-speaking tribes that in the late 6th century AD established a major commercial empire, converting the southeastern section of modern European Russia. But the most striking characteristic of the Khazars was the appearing adoption of Judaism by the Cajun and the greater parts of the ruling class and about 740. The fact itself, however, is undisputed and unparalleled in the history of Central Eurasia. A few scholars have asserted that the Judaized Khazars were the remote ancestors of many of the Jews of Eastern Europe and Russia. Coiler, Encyclopedia, Volume 14, page 65 states, Khazars, a semi-nomadic tribe of Turkish or Tatar origins, were first appeared north of the Caucasus in the early part of the 3rd century. In the English century, Cajun Bulan decided in favor of the Jews and accepted Judaism for himself and for his people. A New Catholic Encyclopedia, Volume 3, page 173, relates, the Khazars were an ethnic group belonging to the Turkish peoples who toward the end of the 2nd century of the Christians era had settled in the region between the Caucasus and the lower Volga and Don rivers. At the beginning of the 8th century, dynastic ties bound the Khazars more closely to Constantinople, which led to a limited spread of Christianity among them. They also became acquainted with Judaism from the numerous Jews who lived in the Crimea and along the Bosphorus when the Byzantine Empire Leo the Isturian persecuted the Jews in AD 723. Many Jews found refuge in the Khazar kingdom, and their influence was so great that around the middle of the 8th century, the king of the Khazars and many of the Khazar nobility accepted the Jewish faith. The Catholic Modern Encyclopedia, page 822 states, Khazars, a Russian people of Turkic origin, who at the height of their power during the 8th and 10th century AD controlled an empire which included Crimea and extended along the lower Volga, as far east as the Caspian Sea. The Khazar royal family and aristocracy converted to Judaism during the reign of King Bulan, 768 through 809 AD, and Judaism was therefore regarded as the state religion. The Jewish author Arthur Koestler relates the following concerning Jewish history. In the 1976 bestseller, The 13th Tribe, the author of Darkness at Noon, Promise and Fulfillment, and The Roots of Coincidence dropped another bombshell by proving that today's Jews were for the most part descendants of Khazars, who converted to Judaism 7 centuries after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. This, of course, is inspired by the story of the covenant in Genesis, and it implies that the Khazars, too, claim the status of a chosen race who made their own covenant with the Lord, even though Khazars were not descended from Abraham's seed. He cannot and does not claim for them the Khazars' Semitic descent. He traces the Khazars' ancestry not to Shem, but to Noah's third son Japheth, or more precisely to Japheth's grandson Togarmah, the ancestor of all Turkish tribes, who have found in the family registers of our father Joseph, asserts boldly that Togarmah had 10 sons, and the names of their offsprings are as follows: Uigur, Urgur, Dursu, Dursu, Avars, Avars, Huns, Huns, and Basili, Basali, Tarnaka, Tarniakh, Khazars, Zagoria, Bulgars, Saber. We Khazars are the sons of Khazar the Seventh, the 13th tribe. Arthur Koestler, pages 58 through 82. Now, any Christian, who believes that the Jews in Israel are actually Jews descended from Abraham need to read Arthur Koestler's 13th Tribe. The Jewish author Alfred M. Lilithino relates the following concerning Jewish history. This comes from the book by Alfred M. Lilithino. The name of it is A Zionist Connection. The existence of the State of Israel is not found on logic. It has no ordinary legitimacy. There is neither in its establishment nor present scope any evident justice, though there may be in utter need and wondrous fulfillment. Arthur Koestler answers this question with an emphatic no in his 1976 bestseller, The 13th Tribe. He dropped another bombshell by proving that today's Jews were, for the most part, descendants of Khazars, who converted to Judaism 7 centuries after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Therefore, the great majority of Eastern European Jews are not Semitic Jews at all, and as most Western European Jews came from East Europe, most of them also are not Semitic Jews. Thus maintained Koestler, the veins of 45% of Israelis, save only the Arab and the Sephardic Jews, plus a big majority of the Jews around the world, are utterly vacant of corpuscular links to the tribe of Moses and Solomon. The Koestler thesis, however startling, is in no wise a new one. The genetic Khazar derivation of most Jews, only the Sephardic, may be accounted. Hebrews by blood has been long, if not widely known. The home to which Weizmann, Silver, Ben Gurion, and so many other Ashkenazi Zionists have long yearned to return has most likely never been theirs. It is anthropological fact. Many Christians may have much more Hebrew Israelite blood in their veins than most of their Jewish neighbors. Ironically enough, too, in Volume 6 of the Jewish Encyclopedia, as of the time of research in 1952, because this publication spelled Khazars with a C instead of a K, is titled Khazars with Chazars to Dreyfus, and it was the framed trial of Captain Alfred Dreyfus as interpreted by Theodore Herzl that made the modern Jewish Khazars of Russia forget their descent from converts to Judaism to establish the state of Israel. And without the hue and cry anti-Semitism, pray what happens to the Zionist movement. Khazar's conversions was not unique. Who can say for sure that many Christian readers of this book might not in fact have a better claim, which they do not choose to exercise, to go back home to Palestine, than Hannah Simmer, Menachem Begin, or Golda Meir, Queen Victoria herself, belonged to an Israelite society that traced the ancestry of its membership back to the lost tribe of Israel. When the word Judaism was born, there was no longer a Hebrew Israelite state. The people who embraced the creed of Judaism were already a mixture of many nations, races, and strains, and this diversification was rapidly growing. The Zionist connection to Alfred M. Lithinel, pages 759 to 768. Anti-Semitism. The word anti-Semitism was an invention by H. H. Beamish in a New York address on October 30th, November 1st, 1937. In 1848, the word anti-Semitic was invented by the Jews to prevent the use of the word Jew. The right word for them is Jew.